Hello and good morning, everyone. We are back. Okay, we're back for 2 days. But we're back, and then we'll be back again next Tuesday. I'm just keeping you guys guessing, that's all. Hello. Hey, hooray. Hooray, everyone. Yay. Oh, thanks for the resub, Julia. Yay, 2 months. It's a baby resub. Awesome. Thank you for keeping it going for us. Awesome. Yes, I am back. I'm only mild. I guess I am tanned. Yeah, I mean, the ring light always washes you out, yes, but I do have a tan here, tan. I don't tan, actually, I freckle, so, you know, I burn or I freckle. But because of David, I did not burn for the first time on a sunny type vacation. Like, I think I'm always dumb. Like, I always forget to put sunscreen on, but he's conscientious about it, so he made sure that I did not burn to a crisp. Which is good, right? Because Hawaii is nearer the equator and you burn really, really fast. So yeah, it was wonderful. Hawaii was awesome because the volcano started erupting while we were there, Dogfather. I don't know if you saw. But yeah, it was actually the day we drove to Hilo that we were planning to go to Volcano National Park the next day. It erupted that day around 3 p.m. So it came back just for us. We didn't get to see lava because you needed a helicopter. It was like way, way down in like the lower caldera, like the sinkhole kind of, the little tiny one. So you would have needed a helicopter to fly over to see lava, but you could totally see the smoke billowing out and you could hear the volcano talking and all that. So yes, happy Hannah's return day. 27 months, Kuroniko. Insane. Just a little insane. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, we heard the volcano talking and we saw the smoke and everything and saw all the steam vents were all active since she woke up. So yeah. So it was cool. And then just a lot of awesome tropical stuff, like did a lot of snorkeling, saw a lot of tropical fish. I got to swim with baby sea turtles, guys, on our last day. Our last day in Hawaii, we went to snorkel at a much more sheltered place than we normally, that David wanted to go to a little bit more wilder places. I'm not real comfortable in the water there. And he was like, you know, wanting to see a sea turtle in the water while he was snorkeling. And I was the one who ran into the sea turtles. So they weren't like little babies. They were like maybe about like this. So I guess you'd call them adolescents probably. 2 adolescent sea turtles. I don't know how fast they grow. Yeah, so it was funny too because I was just like snorkeling in the really safe area because I'm such a noob. I've snorkeled exactly once in my life before this vacation, and I'm not a strong swimmer. So yeah, I was looking at some awesome butterfly fish, my favorite kind, and I turned around and there was this turtle like right here looking at me. Like we were both very startled. I think we both turned around at the same time and were like, it was within like 2 feet of me, like face to face. So, and yeah, about I would say about 2 feet long. So yeah. Yeah, I went there, but I didn't go into the water, Dogfather, at that one because I was told not to snorkel alone. So, and I was alone that vacation. So I didn't do snorkeling. I walked in the surf instead, but it was a beautiful bay. We're going back to Oahu, I think, next trip. But yeah. So got to see baby turtles, and lots of fish. And, we also, walked in the rainforest on the other side of things and saw the botanical gardens over there, which if you ever make it to the Big Island are totally worth it. They're private. They're a private nonprofit. They're not a government park. It was just a guy who essentially came along and was looking. He and his wife came to Hawaii on vacation and they loved it. And so they were looking for a vacation home. And some guy told them, "Oh, I've got a fixer-upper." And they went out and it was a trashed. It was like there were like old rusting cars everywhere, but it was a big tract of land that went down to the ocean. And so he like they had to hack their way through it with machetes, but they like found a waterfall that nobody had ever seen before. And he spent the next like decades of his life turning it into a botanical garden. Vimanakwa expressly forbidden. No bringing back sand, no bringing back rocks from Hawaii. No shells, no nothing. Don't do it. They ask you very, very nicely not to do it. And so I didn't do it. No, I'm not a strong swimmer, Vimanaqua, so any deep water with rough waves scares the bejeebus out of me. Actually, I didn't realize how deep that terror went until I went into rougher ocean this time. And then I realized I actually do have a deep and primal fear of the ocean. So yeah, no surfing. No, no, no. Not gonna do it. Oh, and I saw actual Cornico. This was the coolest because I'm an orchid person. I don't have very many of them. I try not to be that orchid lady, but I have a few. And it was really cool to see them growing wild on trees. Like orchids as they actually grow in the wild. It was really cool. Yeah, totally bad juju. Exactly, Dogfather. Exactly. Um, I don't know, Cornico. We saw a bigger turtle too. Like when we were hiking on the west side, we went to that black and white beach. I sent you guys pictures, I think, on the Discord for my Patreon. But we did actually see a bigger sea turtle and two adolescents playing in the surf or hunting in the surf, right near us off the rocks. So I think they all come in to feed and to sleep at night. I think there are certain sheltered places the turtles come in to sleep, but I think that maybe it was just easier pickings in there for the younger ones. Not sure. Don't know enough about sea turtles to let you know. But I mean, it's common to be able to swim with them. So even big ones, like there are certain bays they frequent. So hopefully I didn't scare that young one out of a year's growth, and hopefully they keep coming back. But I was able to call David over, and he was able to see them. So, oh, no problem. Yeah, but you don't get my fear of Vimanaqua. Like, I don't care, like, any wave, okay? I was trashed by a wave this vacation, guys. A wave, like, a freak wave, totally took me out, slammed me against the bottom, and threw me up the beach. I'm not going in the surf. I don't care if the wave is this big. Not going in. My mother is like this. She has a huge fear of this going in the ocean. And she made us take swimming lessons in high school because she had never, I'm going to start actually painting, by the way, because she'd never learned to swim until college, and she always has been terrified of the water. So, yeah. Doesn't matter, guys. You're not getting it. To surf, you must have surf. You must have waves that are probably a couple feet high. I don't do it. Like, anything more than a foot high, I'm done. I'm done. I can't go out. Like, we're going to work on it, but it's just like, yeah, Cornico, exactly. Yeah, Donwall. Actually, you missed me going on about it. Yeah, it's just when you're out there in the ocean and it's deeper than you can touch the bottom and you're totally out of control, if you're me, because remember, I'm a very weak swimmer. Like, not a strong swimmer at all. David is much stronger swimmer than I am, so he will go out deep, but I will not. So we're actually going to use Ogre Skin today, but I'm going to show you guys how to tune it, because I like to tune it a little bit. But yeah, so it's just, yeah, I didn't realize. I had not been in the ocean for so many years that I didn't realize how deep my fear of the ocean ran until I got into it again. And then I was like, oh, this is a thing. Hello. Yeah, exactly, Julia. That's exactly it. Vimanaqua, sadly, we did not think about a life jacket until it was way later in the vacation, and then we just decided not to do it. Next time I will have a life jacket, and I will maybe feel safer, but without a life jacket, oh no ways. Like, David pulled me out, and the first in, like, he pulled me out deeper along some rocks, right, to snorkel. I was so terrified I had a death grip on his hand the entire time. Like, he believed me then that I was scared. And you know what? Yeah. Well, that and Ogre Skin, like, I'm a first edition D&D player, but I never liked the really, really yellow ogres. If you do, just keep in mind this is a really saturated color, and you're going to need to make the rest of your colors also bright, or neutral. It's the way it goes. But, yes, I had fun. But yeah, what it comes down to, guys, if you think about it, and I told David this, and he totally gets it, is if I'm scared in the ocean, I'm not having fun. I'm on freaking vacation. I should not be going on vacation and be forced to put myself in fear. Like, that's like the opposite of having a good time. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for me. I learned something about myself this vacation. So we're going to put 4 drops of this Ogre Skin in here. So Ogre Skin is a really good yellow, and it's a really high coverage yellow. I mean, relatively speaking. It has some ochre in it, because ogres and ochres go together. So it does have a little bit of a mustardy tone to it, which is kind of how their skin's supposed to be. But although Ron loves this color for Ogre Skin, I tend to like to tune it a little bit. And there are lots of different ways you can tune it. I'm going to get out all my possible shadows here. And get out my highlights and my things here. I think there's one more color. I think Harvest Brown would be a good one too. Yeah. All right. So, yes, good morning. Yeah, life jacket makes me feel safer. But again, it comes back to Dogfather where I ask myself, I'm like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I honestly want to do it? Or am I doing it because I'm just feeling sad that I can't go snorkel with David? Like, it always comes down to, if I'm afraid, why am I making myself do this on vacation, right? Why am I not just playing in the surf and then going and lying out on the beach, which is fun and relaxing? So there's a thing to be said for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. But it's got to be something, I think, that you really passionately want to do. And although snorkeling is fun, I was able to do it not in the deep water, and I had a great time. So, yeah, totally different strokes for different folks. So essentially I told David that I would snorkel with him when we went to shallow places that were well sheltered, and that otherwise I was probably out. You know, I told him we could work on it a little bit, but I didn't want to ever be in that situation again. Viva and Aqua, different strokes for different folks. I work on various things with myself that I'm afraid of. I do actually work on improving myself. However, snorkeling is not a high priority for me. And so when you've got to pick and choose your battles, I think. Keep in mind, I am generally a fairly brave person. I've gone through multiple surgeries in my life, and I came through all of them with a positive attitude. And that's some scary crap when you're going into that. But it's just not important enough to me. Like, I could go to aquariums and see fish and corals, right? It's cool to see them in the wild, but it's not like super like, I want to do this and I'm going to overcome my fear in order to do it, right? Duke Hargarden, I was actually more inspired to do 2D art while we were there, because we went to a lot of art galleries. So, all right, shading colors for Ogre Skin. So whether you want to use Ogre Skin straight up in its yellow gloriousness, or if you want to tune it, as I am going to be tuning it, there are a few things that you can use to shade it. And I would mix the shadow for this one. I mean, you could just go with Chestnut Gold, because this is very close to Palomino, although it is a lot more saturated. So you could use, although I guess now the shadow for Palomino has been canceled, hasn't it? Oh, don't, Ed. Let me get focused. Focused in more ways than one. No, if you already made all those ocean paints. Neural, thank you. Resub for 23 months. If you do it one more month, I get to sing. I get to sing you your double subiversary song. Yeah, mostly I made a lot of kind of surf colored colors before. So Surf Aqua plus Cyan Blue is a beautiful color, for example. Did I come up with any? I'm trying to think. Yeah, actually, there was one. Actually, there was a color combination. You guys, those of you who know me know that I love, well, we did it for a couple of models. You know that I like red, green, and blue together, right? So on the last day, we went up Mauna Kea Volcano. One second. Where is my color? There's my, is that my one? And on Mauna Kea, there, perfect. So on Mauna Kea, I took a picture of the land out below in the slopes of the volcano. Hey, look, guys, it's red, green, and blue. Like, it was perfect. It was exactly the colors I like to paint with. So yeah, so that essentially was pretty darn cool. And that's Mauna Loa, by the way, off in the distance, giving us our blue. And then that's the ground down below. And then that's the volcanic rock on top of Mauna Kea, the red. So, yeah. So it was totally my triad, and David had to roll his eyes at me. But I did think about the lava rock color, kind of that purplyish, reddish, orangish color. Here, hold on. I'll give you guys the pretty picture. There. And I have an even prettier picture, I believe. 1 second. There we go. There we go. So that's when you're up above the clouds watching the sunset. What do you think? Pretty awesome, huh? Like, that was a really cool way to end our vacation. So we went up to the visitor center and then climbed up Sunset Trail. So about 9,500 feet. Yeah, so that was a cool experience. And if you go to Hawaii, the last bit, if you're really afraid of heights, like really, really afraid of heights, may give you some heebie-jeebies. There was one guy who stopped and just pretty much refused to go farther. I'm a little bit afraid of heights, but there was enough land on either side of me till the drop-off that I felt pretty okay. But I highly recommend it. Just going up to 9,500 feet. It is high altitude, so if you have heart issues, don't go. But yeah. Eventually, we'll actually talk about paint today. I promise. But yeah, we went to a lot of art galleries too. So I saw some pieces that I really liked, but David wasn't as thrilled. We have to agree. We have to agree on a piece of art to buy it for our house. So like, there was this guy though. I saved his card doing amazing seascapes. Who was a surfer turned painter, and he got the water perfect. Like you could tell he'd spent days staring at it to figure out how to do it. He was really good. Yeah. All right, so you can use any of these colors and actually the other one you can use that's a really good call is, where did I just put it? I just took it out. Where did it? Now I'm sad. I just had my Oxide Brown here, and I put it into my, there it is. Got a gray cap. There, we'll add that one. That's actually a really good one too. So all of these colors are great to mix shades for Ogre Skin. Now, Oxide Brown and Tarnished Copper are a bit more red. And so if you add these into your Ogre Skin, you're going to get that reddish shift, that orangey reddish shift. And Harvest Brown is very, very orange. So keep in mind, you're going to end up with quite a vibrant orangey shadow, but that can look pretty cool if you want to go there. More of a natural, your more natural tones are probably Rich Leather or Russet Brown. Rich Leather has a bit of green to it, but that's going to just go away instantly when you add it to Ogre because it's just so yellow. So yeah, you'll have to translate that one for me, Dogfather. I'm not great with Hawaiian language. But yeah, and then Russet Brown is probably the most natural way you could go. That's going to shove it toward a warm yellow brown with kind of a golden brown. So that would be a nice rich color to use if you wanted to use that for the shadow. Now, that said, and all of these are still applicable as well if you want to mix a little bit of other color into the yellow to tone it down, which, in fact, you could even just use a little bit of one of these, any of these mixed into that yellow to make it more of a natural, like yellowy brown color. Yes, I did. It's a parrotfish. Thanks, Redlinks. Yeah, saw lots of triggers, lots of butterflies, an angel or two. My favorite is the copper-banded butterfly, and I saw one in the wild. He was really big, too. So that was cool. Saw a lot of sea urchins and starfish and some coral, and, you know, the usual, like, damsels and gobies and stuff like that. I used to do saltwater fish tanks, so I'm really familiar with the different fish. $200 and $305 look identical. They are slightly different. Actually, they're quite different when you get them out. So You can kind of see this up here where it got dirty and I wiped it off. See how yellow this is? This is a much more orangey, yellowy color. It's got a very, very heavy front load of yellow in this color, and it will go extremely orange. See that color right there? That's it. This is much redder, if you can see the difference between those. But this is much browner and yellower, and this is much more red. Yeah, 305, I mean, that's tarnished copper, so it should look more red, more orangey. Orangey and reddish. So yes, so that's the copper. And that's the difference you're going to get in mixing these guys in. This is going to go much more orange. This is going to go orange, but it's going to be tuned a little bit more subtle. It's not going to be like hit you in the face orange. This one's probably going to be hit you in the face orange for shadows, which, like I said, can look pretty cool. Just experiment. If I were you, I'd do a paper doll. I'd actually take a picture of your primed ogre in grayscale. Print it out, like print out 4 of them, maybe small so you can do it fast, and just color them in a little bit with each of, mix up your colors and do it. See which one you like the best. I've been recommending that more and more because it's so easy if you have a printer to just print out a page of like little, pictures of your miniature in black and white and then just paint over it. It works really well, actually. Okay, so let's talk about actually modifying this color towards something I actually want to use. So there's a couple of colors. I usually will use skin tones mixed in with, let me see, do I have another one in here that I would use? You could even use Rosy Shadow if you really wanted to. You could use Ruddy Skin, Ruddy Flesh. So depending on how you want to take it, I just like to use something that's more skin tone into this yellow to like just dull it down just a little. I don't like the bright color. If you do like this bright color, as I mentioned earlier, the thing about this is that if you use this for the skin tone and you don't kind of make it a little more muted through shadows and highlights, say you use this and then you use maybe your Harvest Brown as a shadow, so it's really vibrant still. I would keep in mind that your other colors need to stay more saturated. Don't go for any grayed out colors on other parts of the ogre or it will kind of clash. I ran into this recently coaching as somebody had done a desat. They'd done the opposite. They'd done a very desaturated skin tone and a very saturated hair, and it was clashing like crazy. Because the skin tone was wonderful. It was a dark African skin tone, and they brought it up with off-whites, and it actually looked really, really convincing. But because they brought it up with off-whites, it had gone a little bit gray, because it's dark skin tone, bringing it up with white. You're going to get some gray tones. And it was realistic looking, but then you put bright colored stuff next to it, and it was clashing like crazy. So that's why I say don't use grayed out colors next to stuff that's too saturated. You are going to essentially end up with a color clash, and you're going to be like, this doesn't look quite right. Or your friends are going to be like, ew. So, keep that in mind. It's all up to your goals, but in general, grayed out colors do not look good with bright colors. The exception is if the grayed out colors are closer to neutral, like Shield Brown is a neutral brown. It is grayish, but it's not like more gray than brown. And the other thing is if your bright colors are very small. So if you've got everything very muted, but your bright colors are small, you can get away with it. So yeah, I like Sandy Brown is actually what Doug Cohen uses. He's a historical painter who always comes to ReaperCon, always has some amazing stuff. He uses this to mix skin tones all the time. And then Tan Skin is very close to Sandy Brown. It's kind of like they're like these guys. Some of the darker bones skin tones, I don't have them out here, but 9442, what used to be Barbarian Skin. 9442 would also be a great color to mix in here. And Ruddy Flesh, if you want to take it a little bit more brownish and darker, you could do that. So I'm going to mix in, I think I'm going to use, is Sandy Brown still in print, guys? Tell me that. Hey, Grey Wolf, thank you. 9 months, 8-month streak. So if 9249 is still in print, we'll go forward. Quindy, do you know? Or is Quindy not here today? I know I gave her a long break, so I'm going to get this in frame here. There we go. Let's do some switch. Not found on the website, huh? Okay, so it's out. That's such a bummer. Okay, so instead of this, you can actually use 9442. Oh, whether 9249 was still in print or not. I have a bottle because I always kind of liked it as an alternative. But we use tan skin. Maybe we'll use a mix of this. But yeah, you could use 9442, which I don't remember the new name, but it's... But it's a perfectly viable option. Or even 9443. Any like medium toned to dark toned. Yeah, that's a bummer. So I'm going to use stuff that's in print. I'm going to go for 2 drops of tan skin. I just like my ogres. Like, I like to have a yellowish skin tone, but I like my ogres to be a little more natural skin tone. So, and that's just me. But I'm going to show you guys how to do it, because otherwise it's pretty simple. Swarthy flesh. Thank you. There we go. So what that does, you'll notice, see, it's going to take it a little less bright yellow. So I'm going to put down, actually, I'm going to put down the regular ogre skin next to it to show you guys, so you have a direct comparison. So what tan skin has in it is got some black and white and ochre and brown oxides. And a little red oxide too, I think. So mixing all those colors in, you can see how it's no longer a bright yellow. Now you could use this as your base and actually go up to this if you wanted. But I like this color actually quite a bit for starting out with. I could work with this. But you see that it's darkened it down. That's the oxides and the black working together to add that darker brown tone. And it's funny too, because it almost looks darker. In some ways, it looks darker than the tan skin if I put that in the palette. So you could even mix more tan skin in if you want. If you mix anything brown in, it's going to knock that yellow down right away. But I think I'm going to mix my shadow with Ready Flesh, maybe. Ready Flesh and Rich Leather are very close, so I could also use like Oxide Brown. Maybe we'll use Oxide Brown just for fun. We'll keep it fairly saturated. How about that? So I'm going to add a little bit of water to my my ogre skin here, just to keep it good. For highlights on this, guys, if you want to keep it bright, use something like Lemon Yellow or NMM Gold Highlight, or Buckskin Pale would work pretty well as well. That's got ochre in it. I like them maybe a little more natural, so I'm probably going to go for Assyrian Sand. Because I like to, if I'm going to use a fairly saturated color straight out, I'm going to pull it a little bit more desaturated with my highlights and shadows. That way I still get a fairly vibrant color, but I also have a little more playroom. The thing is that if you manage to mute the color even just a little bit, like I've done here, you get more options. So when you're looking at using a really saturated color, ask yourself, if you want more options, ask yourself, can I mute this just a little bit and still love it? You know, and if the answer is yes, then do it, because you can work a lot more different colors in and around that then. Whereas if you stick to brights, you're going to have to stick to brights for everything, like relatively. Whereas if you mute things a little bit, you can get them to meet in the middle. You get just a lot more colors that will work with your ogre or with your whatever you're doing. All right, where is my crappy base coat brush? Haha. Yeah, we brought painting stuff on vacation with us, and David ended up, actually, he was working on a Kingdom Death monk, hand-to-hand fighter. She was pretty cool, and she also has a fire effect on her fists. I'm like, you have to paint her as Pele. You have to. So he actually changed his direction on the piece and ended up putting Hawaiian tattoos on her. It was pretty awesome. So he was more inspired than I was. I just came away wanting to do canvas again. I'm having these horrible, just kind of like craving to get my hands on 2D art again. All right, so let's start with the head. He's wearing a collar, so that makes it easy. And I'm just going to do the whole face. With monsters like this, where you're working with, like gnolls are the same, or goblins, I'll usually just paint the whole thing over with skin tone, even the hair. It's going to give you a faster base coat, and you can always come back and change it. You can always paint over it when you got to do the details. But if I just want to get a fast base coat down, So this is very mustardy. It's very ogre-y still, I think. And putting that Ogre Skin over the white primer would give us a very bright yellow. Very, very bright. But I want to get this. I want to get the face blocked in. We'll work on the muscles until the face dries. Then we'll put another coat on. Then we're going to block in our shadows and highlights, or at least our shadows. In fact, once I've got this first coat down, I'll do a fast shadow once it's dry. Let's see. So when you have to do a smooth base coat, actually, I'm going to do a video on this, but I guess it's probably a good time to talk about it on stream. Oh, no, Trash. Did you miss it? Yeah, see, if you're probably not on my Patreon. I actually posted it up on my Patreon, and I also announced it last stream. But yeah, so Engaged. He actually proposed a while ago, but he let me pick out the ring. So I essentially, since I got to pick out the ring, it wasn't done right away. So we actually didn't announce it until a couple weeks after we were actually engaged. I wanted it for ReaperCon, but it was still being made. All right, let's start. And I'm going to paint right over the green stuff here, guys. There's no problem in doing so. It's cured, so it's good. So when you're doing smooth base coats, make sure you're using a lot of paint on your brush. See how much paint I have? It's all cool. Don't worry you're putting it on too thick, because you can spread it around, and you should. But the thing about this is that you want enough paint there that it's going to self-level. That's going to flow together and be really smooth. So you always thin your paint on the base coat, and you just a little, and you always apply it copiously. And start at, if you don't have an edge to start at, create an edge that's just on the side of the figure. The side of the figure is usually not a prime viewing angle, so essentially treat that as if it's an edge and go all the way around the figure. The reason you do this is so that the paint can flow together as you go around the figure. And if you do that, if you do it this way, notice I'm not getting any brush strokes. I'm putting it down with a big soft sable. Don't use a Taklon. They're stiff and they will tend to leave brush strokes unless you really load the paint on. Always thin your paint for this type of application. I'm not very thin here. I'm probably between a 4:1 and a 6:1 paint to water. But you want a little water in there because it will keep the paint from doing that crackle thing if you put it on too thick. It usually doesn't do that. We had a problem with a base a long time ago that was a crackly kind of base if it was applied too thick. Most of our paint now resists that, but you can make sure that you don't get into that problem if you just thin it just a little bit for your base coat. Also, you won't get brush marks. And you do risk getting brush marks if you do not thin your base coat. Put on a lot. And it's all flowing together and it's a perfect smooth coat. And then just work your way around the model. You can work top down or you can work around. With this guy, since I painted his head separately because I could, because of that collar, I will work around. And you always want to be working against your wet edge. So you want to work fairly quickly, but if you thinned your paint a little and you're applying a lot of it, it actually gives you more time. Thinned paint applied very little at a time will dry extremely quickly. Like when you layer, the brush stroke is pretty much dry right when you put it down. But when you're putting extra paint on like this, it takes a while. And that leaves you with that wet edge longer so that you can always make sure that you're working up against that wet edge. Don't go paint over here and get distracted because by the time you come back, your edge will be dry. And maybe you'll get away with it without a brush mark, but you also could end up with chunkies. So just don't do it. Then when you do join it up with the dry edge under the arm here, it's under the arm. So even if you get a little bit of chunkiness or a little bit of irregularity there, it's not going to show up because you put it in a nice out of the way place. Likewise, top of the shoulder, I'm doing it under the club here. So if I get some overlap with that dry edge, it's not going to show up. It's out of the way. It's not at an angle that anybody's going to look at it. And that is how you do a smooth base coat. So many people don't talk about that. But that's it. That's the key there. And then if you get bubbles, which sometimes you will because you put on a lot of paint, just blow on them. And they'll break. Yep. Thanks, Jabberwock. Yeah. Yeah, I like square diamonds. I mean, with David's last name being Diamondstone, I kind of had to go with diamond. But I really don't. I'm not a fan of round ones. I really think square ones are classy. So, yeah. And we did the cathedral setting, too. So there's that. I really love it. Hey, Mike. How's it going? Yeah, I was just explaining how to do a smooth base coat on our ogre here. Our very ochre-y ogre. And yes, some people missed my engagement announcement, so I was elucidating upon the rock. There we go. And if you find, while it's still wet, if you see that there's extra, there's a lot of pooling and you don't want that, while it's still wet, you can take your damp brush and just kind of wick it off a little. But as long as you've added water, it's not going to really hurt it to dry that way. Still, I don't like to leave really deep paint puddles, so as long as I've got some room, as long as I can see it's still really wet, I will pick some of that out with my brush. But yeah, Mike, I just got back from vacation in Hawaii, so I'm very well. I'm extremely well. I'm here for like today and tomorrow, and then I have to go and do my national dog show thing that I do for my nonprofit. I didn't go the last couple of years because my old dogs were old and sick, so. Yes, correct. I am here today and tomorrow, and then I am gone until, I have Monday. I get back Sunday night, but I have a dentist appointment Monday morning I totally forgot about, so I have to go and get my teeth drilled, and then I'll be back on Tuesday. So yeah, and after that, I am here through the holidays, pretty much. So. It's just we went a long time with me every day because of COVID, right? Nobody was going anywhere, so I was always here. Just once again, I'm taking a little bit of that extra paint out of there so that it dries. Let's go back to our face. Yeah, our head is pretty dry at this point, so let's mix up a shadow and go with that. Let's use. I said I was going to use Oxide, didn't I? Hawaii was wonderful. I talked about it a lot at the start of the stream, Twisted Oma. Probably the highlights were climbing Mauna Kea to see the sunset, getting to actually get face-to-face with a sea turtle while I was snorkeling by surprise, and going to the botanical gardens on their very rainy east side. And there was amazing food. Lots of amazing food. I only put up a picture of one thing in the Discord, and my Patreon Discord, but there was a lot of amazing food. Tasty, tasty food. So much good fish. Like, just so much. Fresh out of the ocean, good fish. All right, so let's mix a shadow here. I'm going to just put down... The oxides are very strong. They're extremely highly pigmented. So I'm going to put down 3 drops, and I'm going to do 3 drops of the Ogre Skin and see what I get. But yeah, for newbie people who are struggling with getting smooth base coats and their base coats look all rough and not even, that's what you do. You thin your paint just a little bit. You apply it with a softer brush. You apply a lot of it. You start at one edge, you go all the way around the figure, or you start at the top and you go down the figure and then you do the other side. Yeah, I know, but I need breaks too. I was like seriously getting some burnout. Like, I feel great now. I'm just like, woo! Plus, it's fall. It's my favorite season. This is the season I get crap done. All right, let's do 3 drops of this. So it's a 50-50 mix of Oxide Brown, the new Oxide Brown from the Kickstarter, and Ogre Skin, 94.59. We will add a couple of drops of paint to it to make it about 3-to-1. I mean, it's Kickstarter. You can still order it, I think, through the 5.5, right? The new... Is the Pledge Manager still open, Quindy? Yeah, I mean, it'll release eventually after the Kickstarter, Jabberwock. If you have the old Ruddy Brown from HD, it's very close, though, Jabberwock. So if you are a classic Reaper fan and you have the HD colors, then if you've got Ruddy Brown, you've got something very, very close. Thank you for the Pledge Manager link, Quindy. All right, so you can see how strong the Oxide Brown is and that the yellow hardly touched it, right? It's insane. So what that tells us is if we were considering wet blending this, that we would have to go very, very light with this Oxide Brown. And that's a way to test it, by the way, y'all. When you are mixing colors and you are inevitably going to run into colors that are extremely highly pigmented or that the pigment is very pervasive and it diffuses quickly through the other color and overwhelms it, similar to blue, similar to red when you add it to yellow. The red is much stronger and overwhelms the yellow, so you end up having to use a ton of yellow and only a little red to get a good orange. So yeah, this is a good test. If you just add 1-to-1 mix, do a 1 drop to 1 drop and see how they balance, you're going to get an idea about if they're equal weight or if one of them is much stronger than the other. Yellows tend to be weak, and this is still a yellow. So that's why that oxide is just like wham, and it hits the yellow with a hammer, and the yellow's like ah, and falls over. That's essentially why that happens. It's both pigmentation and it's the nature of the beasts. It has a little to do with pigment grind. Sometimes color strength. I'm going to do another batch of this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just because I'm getting low on it. And I'm probably going to want to touch up my base coat. Open till the end of the month. Thank you, Quindy. Keep an eye on time. I'm a little bit jet lagged. It's a 3-hour time difference. So it was a little bit rough yesterday, but I slept crappy the night before last, so that always helps me adjust. Because then I was actually tired enough to go to bed at my regular time last night. So I'm hoping by tomorrow I'm actually going to be A-okay. And then I have to go to Indianapolis and do a 3-hour time difference that way. No. That's a little easier coming back, though, because you can get up early. Easier. Thank you for the tiny cheer, Rax. Sweet. So yeah, so I'm not going to do my own stream this week, guys, because I'll be in Indianapolis by that point. So we will be back to our normal and scheduling as of the 12th of October. And then you'll have me through, I have a family trip, a trip with my brother and my mom and dad and my brother's family coming up. Over just after Christmas, but I will be here pretty much till up to Christmas, and then we'll take that little vacation, and then I'll be back again, and then the con season starts, right? The convention season is gonna start again, like Adepticon and stuff. So, but yeah, I should really only be out for cons after that. Alrighty, so we've got our shadow, and we've got this. So let's get a better brush out. We want a bigger brush because we are working with a big ogre. So we're going to grab our Raphael. Although, to be fair, we might have a better brush for this. I don't know. Yeah, I think the problem with Raphael is it's got that tip. It's got that really, really razor tip, and that's not great for wet blending. You actually want a little bit more of a firm tip. So let me see what I got here. Should I use my Escoda? Maybe I should. Sadly, I'm not a fan of the Escoda brand. The brushes just tend not to hold up as well, in my experience. But maybe this will work. It'll at least work for wet blending. I had to really, really reshape it there. So this is, when I talk about wedge-shaped brushes, like this would be like the Winsor & Newton series, miniature series. Winsor & Newton Kolinsky's, but the miniature series. This, that's what they're like. They're wide, and they taper very quickly. And they're really good for blending, for side blending. So, hello. Yeah, we had a very good vacation. It was good. I mean, it would have been a long time, right? It's like everybody's not been able to travel. And so far, Hawaii was very careful. They were very, very careful. You had to get like your vaccination card approved in advance and stuff. And then places would check it here and there. Alrighty, so let's do a little bit of wet blending here. This is a 1-to-1 mix with Ogre Skin and the new Oxide Brown, but as I mentioned, the Oxide Brown is very, very strong, and the Ogre Skin is a yellow, so it's easily overwhelmed. So I'm going to do a little test, and that's probably more like kind of 50-50 there. So probably I wanted to do a 1-to-4 instead. Crows, our dogs went through a few different food changes during their lives. We were kibble users. Probably the food that the dogs did best. We did, I can't remember, Taste of the Wild was one that we had them on for a long time. But it actually didn't agree. Like, they had better coats, like their coat and their, like, they're just kind of, their attitude was better when we switched to, Pro Plan of all things, Purina. Everybody disses Purina, but frankly, they've got like a big staff of scientists who put a ton of time into researching nutrition for dogs. So I was pretty happy with that. At the end, though, I switched Kiri to Castor and Pollux because they have a wild caught salmon. And so I switched her to that, and she did very well on that. So I might start a new puppy on that. Large breed puppies are a little bit different, so you've got to make sure you've got your calcium phosphorus ratio down and not to overfeed them. So with large breed puppies, I would feed an adult food. I would phase them off of puppy food pretty quickly and onto adult food. That was what we did anyway. Everybody's different though. Dog food is such a loaded topic because so many people believe really strongly that raw fed is the only way to go. So many people feel really strongly that kibble is evil. You know, just do your research, make sure that you're not going to hurt your dog. And if you want to cook for your dog, do it. If you want to do raw, do it, you know, stuff like that. We never did raw because of the bacteria thing, because we had young nieces that were crawling around in our yard and that would have not been good. So things like that. Oh, hold on. I'll double check. Yeah. Hold on. Let me look and make sure it's not me, guys. Let me go over. All right, guys, I'm going to do a quick speed test just to make sure that it's not me. Before we start wet blending. All right. We're doing okay on the download. Let's see what the upload's like. And upload. Here we go. Yeah, upload's a little dicey right now. It's okay. Ooh. Internet's a little rocky. How is it now, guys? Yeah. Large breed formulas should get reformulated for calcium and phosphorus. It's a really important ratio for large breed dogs, large breed puppies especially. I think it's 1.2 to 1 that it should be at. But, yeah, I mean, I can't really... I had a really good experience with Purina for the most part. Yeah, it was like marginal, Quindy. I've got 5. 5 is like, but it's not as good as I usually have, so I'll run it again. Yeah, hold on. Got good down, but crappy up. Checking again. I'm gonna make sure we're good before I do this wet blend because I don't want you guys to get chops and kicked off. Come on, computer. I'm home for 2 days. Can you not work, internet? Oh, I'm back. Yeah, now we're good. We're good on up, guys. Okay, it should be good now. I'm getting 25. Okay, you should be good now. Try a refresh, guys. Because it's like, it's giving me 25 to 30 upload now. So we should be A-okay. Looks good now? Yep, that's what I thought. Yeah, I don't know what is up with the internet sometimes. All right, so let's block in some shadows. So we got to ask ourselves, guys, do we want to do dramatic shadows on this guy? Like, we could try to do some really dramatic stuff and do really dark shadows. But then we have to, like, pay attention to all of where our dark shadows should be. I'll wait for you guys to, like, catch up. So do we want to do some really dark shadows, or do you want me to just paint him so that you guys can... Yeah, good. Good deal, good deal. Yeah, so we could do a dramatic light sourcing, like top down. Or I could just paint them so you guys could see the colors. Because if we do dramatic light sourcing, we don't talk about the colors much. We're more concerned about the about light direction and shadows. But if you guys want, we can do like dramatic shadows. It's just we won't talk as much about colors then, and it might be a little bit different. Oh yeah, I like Honest Kitchen a lot. I use it as a topper, Dogfather. I don't like to feed it. At the end of Kiri's life, I was feeding it straight to her just because she was not wanting to eat. But yeah, they're all pretty much just do your research and decide what's best for you, your budget, your dog, and it could be the best, like, I'll say it again. It could be the best food in the world, but if your dog doesn't like it, then it's the worst food for your dog. So try around. Do not let your dog get into there's a game that dogs play called I'll Only Eat If. And if you switch your food too frequently, you will get into that game. Don't get into that game ever with your dog. Dogs love variety, just like people, and your dog will play you and try to refuse to eat to see if something better is coming. So don't get into that game, or your dog will have you wrapped around its little paw in no time. All right, we'll do drama then. I probably should do a cool shadow, but I'm going to do warm. So, okay, here's the dealio. You can get away with a very warm shadow if everything around, like the model, like if the area around the model is colored warm, is a red, orange, golden, cream color, anything like that is going to reflect warm sunlight back up at the model. At that point, you can get away with a warm shadow. Otherwise, your shadow, if you try to do a cold stone here, like a gray stone or a gray blue stone or anything like that, and then you do a warm shadow, it's not going to read correctly. Yeah, cats play the same game. You want me to do a game table paint job? I don't know. I mean, this guy you could do a game table paint job on. He's very similar, or he's very simple. He's very big. Yeah, I didn't really have to do that one, Crows. My dogs, like, really liked the food we gave them in general. They were all, like, into their food. Like, honestly, if they're really healthy on it and they're happy and they eat it enthusiastically, like, I'm cool with it. But yeah, like I said, everybody is different. Like, just do what feels right for you and your animals. As long as they are eating well, happy, and healthy, everybody is good. I think like with painting, with pet food, there is no one right way. So, okay, so I want a dark shadow, dark shadow, dark shadow, dark shadow, dark shadow. I'm just going to kind of wet blend. The face is a small area to be using this big of a brush on, but oh well. And do some shadow in the ears. And not all of these shadows will be like accurate. Like I will have to go and knock some back. But I'm trying to like identify the planes of the head right now. So the side of the head is the side of the head. Like you can see. Here, hold on. Let's get this out of here. So what you're trying to do when you're painting, especially faces, is you're identifying the planes. Like everybody's head has various angles if you really break it down. The head really isn't a sphere. The skull is a sphere, but the front of the face is boxy. So you always want to be looking at that when you are blocking in shadows, especially because the shadows tend to define the form. So I don't want to go too deep with that shadow between the brows because the top of the head is going to be catching the light. But I do need this shadow under the nose, and it's really rough. Just go rough with it. Don't overthink. You can always. The great thing about acrylics, guys, is if you paint it badly, or you paint it the wrong way, or you paint it and it doesn't look quite right, you could paint over it. So just go. Just do it. Do not fear the paint. But every time you've got a nice hollow, you want to make sure to put in a shadow. This means that our base work will have to be warmer colored. I want to put a dark shadow back here by the collar. I'll probably go with a different color back there, but for now I'm going to block it in. And it's okay to be messy. You can always make it pretty later. In my earlier painting life, I was very afraid to get messy. I wanted everything to be neat from the ground forward. But lately, I'm enjoying painting with a little bit more freedom. So it's not as restrictive. So we've got the sides of the head here. The cheekbones are definitely going to get light. And if you wonder what gets light, just look top of the head down. And I'm going to actually go in around this nose, shade around this nose, and then come back for highlights. 1 second. Because the nostrils definitely flare out. So, good. All right, so let's look at this, and let's block it in. Ah! Oh, yeah. That's good, Korniko. Oh, it's okay. We can talk about pet food. It's all good. It's just, it can be a controversial topic, so I don't want to, like, get into it too heavily. Bottom line is, do what works. Every breed of dog, every dog is different, too. So, some dogs will have reactions to stuff, and you got to worry about that, so. Food allergies are very common. Environmental allergies also for dogs. So I'm going to get the top of this nose, because we can see, right? We can see it needs a highlight. And even if I go and I change the color on the nostrils here to bring more like blood flow into it, I'm going to at least block them in yellow first. So essentially, if you can see it from above, wherever the direction of your light is, and in this case, if we do a top down, we want these areas to be lighter. So grab your mid-tone at the very least. In the end, these will be highlighted, but at least block in and double check yourself by looking at it from above. It's very easy to do that here. You can see where that part of the skull comes out. Make sure that we've got all those areas and the tops of the ears also. I got a little bit too dark over here. You can see that shadow. You shouldn't be able to if the light's from above, so you can double check yourself. Having an overhead camera like this is very handy for that, but you can also just look down on the model. And you just want to make sure that, in general, you're not seeing any dark shadows from the top. Then you can go in, kind of check from the front. So I think I need more yellow. Now, since yellow is kind of see-through, you do need to underpaint with white sometimes if you've done a heavy shadow over an area, and then you just can't bring it back up. No problem, Thormel. I like to be useful. I'm glad that I gave you useful info. Thanks for the Kiri face, Crowley. Yeah, I know. I'm like, gotta get all our travel in this year before puppy hits, because there will be puppy. eventually. So if I underpaint, I'm probably just going to do a 2-to-1 paint to water with pure white. Just a thin, you don't need a lot of white. You don't need a huge heavy coat of white underneath to bring your yellow back up. You just need a little bit. In our, we voted, and this is Ogre Skin. This is the color that first edition D&D said ogres were. I don't like the really bright yellow. That's Ogre Skin. So I mix it always with a bit of normal skin tone. In this case, we use tan skin. But you could also use Swarthy Flesh from Bones, or the one up from Swarthy Flesh. Yeah, we voted a while back on what color. Asked people what they would like to do. Because the other thing that we thought about was a Swamp Ogre, but, you know, we can always do another one of those in the future. Plus, I felt Swamp Ogre was a lot like the troll we did. But yeah, we voted on how to tackle it, but we went traditional. So now we're going to take this yellow skin, and we're going to try to make it, we're going to see how we can make it look natural, right? Because it's hard when you've got a color that's counterintuitive. And this works for aliens, too. So like if anytime you're doing something yellow, so like aliens, monsters, things like that, mixing in a little bit of a more naturalistic color, like in this case, a skin tone, a human skin tone, and then bringing it down with browns, bringing it up with off whites. I could even mix a little more skin tone into the highlights if I wanted to, depending on what we're going to do. But anyway, we're just showing how to kind of tune the yellow, make it not quite as glaringly yellow. And we'll still come up with something that looks like ogre, but it won't be like an eye-glaring yellow. Oh, Kirill Kanave, I think. It's different. It's definitely a more advanced book, but he does teach some basics as well, so. All right, I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I think I'm going to move to my Da Vinci, actually. I'm just going to not use the Raphael. I had all my tubules jammed onto my brushes pretty tight because we were traveling, so it was like, tubule. There. Alrighty. So we're going to use the standard Kolinsky now. Viva Aqua, because I wanted to come in. I know what my base coat is. I'll just write it down on a card. I didn't want to waste a lot of time just base coating for you guys. I wanted to get into shading and highlighting on the face so that we could talk about more interesting stuff. Does that make sense? But yes, normally if painting the model, I would base coat all the areas that need a base coat. On stream, we do things a little wonky. Sometimes, because I want to get into more of the meat of what we're doing. So yeah, if I try to put this yellow base over this cheekbone, and I notice that it's staying dark, I can mix a tiny bit of white in. Put that down first, and then put yellow over the top, and I'll get my yellow back. This goes for any area where I feel like I got a little bit out of the way with my highlights. Or my shadows, rather. Always remember the shadows under noses, by the way. A lot of people don't. And that goes even for tiny figures. It helps define the face. Even for 28 mil. For a human figure, you still want to put a little bit of shadow on the underside of the nose. There. So now we've got that back. So anywhere we need that bright yellow to come up bright again, but we put brown down accidentally, or we thought it went there, and then we realized we really didn't want it there. Just take a little bit of your white, and this is pure white thinned 2-to-1. Still pretty strong. You can just put down a little bit of white, and right away just put a little bit of yellow over it. Get your yellow back. Yeah, everybody's got some excellent ideas in the chat about how to do this. I personally, if I'm doing an unusual angle, I will point my light from that angle or point the mini in that direction so that I can see that, and I'll take reference photos. Was showing somebody this at ReaperCon. But there was one time, and even when my mini's just sitting on my desk, sometimes it'll have a cool lighting effect from my lights in the open window, and I'll be like, ooh, I gotta catch that. So actually, there's one mini that I want to do a warm front light and a cold backlight on. So I actually like put the back of the model toward the window where the blue light from outside is coming in. I put my warm face light on the front of it and took pictures all around it so that I would know exactly where the warm and cool went. So yeah, I do that. Only usually need that when you've done it enough, you just get a feel for it. Until you get to be like David, who's just a freak of nature and really good at it. But you'll instinctually kind of get where your lights and shadows should go. Hey, Dicey guy. So, all right. So we've got shadows kind of blocked in here. So you guys can see like the head. And on the ogre, his skull isn't even round. Like technically his skull is probably more of an oval. With humans, the skull is round, but the front of the face is a box. And so you want to keep an eye on the planes of the face, like the flat sides of the skull up here. You can definitely see it when you look at it from the front. You can see how flat the skull goes on the sides. Let's put a little bit of a darker shadow underneath the eyes. Really get it. The darker you go, the more dramatic it's going to look. So if we really want this to go high drama, we'll keep tuning it down. And often I'll just do the quick block in like I did this time. And then I'll go back and I'll start really darkening things down where it should be dark. At the most dark. And also, keep in mind that in direct sunlight, you won't see a blend between the brightest light and the shadow side. Like on an arm, you'll see a transition. But like often if for something that drops off sharply like a cheekbone, sometimes you will see a very defined line between highlight and shadow. So if you get a little bit sharp on this, it's going to look more like sunlight, essentially, is what you get down to. And I probably will need to bring in a slightly cool shadow at that demarcation line, even with a warm reflected light, but we'll see. Dicey guy, this is actually Ogre Skin. It's the way that ogres were done back in first edition D&D. Our Reaper's art director, Ron Hawkins, is a big time like first edition D&D person. So a lot of the time when I would paint for Reaper, he would want me to use the old colors like orange goblins. So yeah. So we're using this, and I like to tone it down a little bit. So this is actually Ogre Skin, but I like to add a little bit of a human skin tone to it. So I added a couple drops of tanned skin. And that's what gives us this darker mustardy color, which I really like. And then this color is actually a new Kickstarter color from the Bones 5 Kickstarter, the Oxide Brown. It's 50-50 mixed with the skin tone and this. So I wanted to do a little bit of blending. So that is what we are using. And I'm starting just with the face, but now we're going to work out. We're going to work out to the rest of the neck and stuff here. So with these tendons, if you want a very dramatic shadow, you really want kind of a sharper demarcation line. And this is why I always tell you guys you should go to art galleries and look at paintings, because if you look at somebody who's really good at lighting and figures, like the faces, portraiture, things like that, you can learn a lot from looking at how they do cloth and how they do lighting on faces and depending on the setting and everything. I love looking at 2D art now more than I did when I was in art school. I learn a lot looking at it and thinking about if this was a miniature, like how would I do that, right? So dark shadow there, you can see that I've actually painted them in, but it's giving us that really dramatic look. I'm going to block in a little bit of shadow here. If I really need to double check myself, again, I can look at it myself from the top, make sure I don't see any of that actual dark shadow there. Or I can also tilt the model toward my light source. I've got a big ring light up here, so I can use that to see, like, okay, see that shadow right there? So now I know I need to paint that in right there. And I might not do it full strength. This is a little bit thinned. Remember also that your highlights and shadows and the shape of your highlights and shadows are going to define the shape of the muscle you're putting it over. So if this is a slightly rounded muscle here, we want to keep that rounded. See how I softened it and made it a little bit oval? We want to keep that shape because that's going to define that shape. If you just do an angle there, it's going to make this look like like a box of a muscle. And muscles do tend to be rounded, so you do want to do that. Now I'm going to keep that pretty strong shadow there, I think. I'm going to blend it in a little bit with here. If you soften it just a little, you can see how you just soften that edge. It'll make it look like the sunlight isn't quite so harsh. Whereas if you keep your shadows very angular, it's going to either suggest something stylized, like comic book style, or it's going to maybe kind of transform or mutate the shapes of the model. Technically, I always thought that if you wanted to paint a miniature that was kind of cubist, what you would do is you would actually extra anglify everything, like imply extra angularness of the muscles of everything as you were doing in organic form. You can't quite do the deconstruct thing that cubism does with miniatures because you'd have to have the miniature sculpted that way. But you could definitely accentuate. You could take a model with more curves and circles like this and accentuate the angular properties of it because of how cut he is, right? So we could do that. Hey, 23 months. Well, I'm going to have to sing a lot like next month when you guys renew. So a couple of people with double sub-anniversaries. Thank you, Hein. Yeah, that's cool, Dicey Guy. Awesome. That's what I aim to do. I want to make you guys like feel like painting. Run off and paint. Try new things. Get all excited. So we've got, see the shadow under that bicep. So we do have a bit of a shadow there. We can vary up our shadow too, though, because we could make this shadow really, really, really dark back here and keep this one a little bit lighter. So even if you are doing dramatic shadows, you don't have to have the same level of drama everywhere. That's really up to you, your lighting and how you're trying to do stuff. But see how that's all coming out now. Let's darken down here because we've got this angular shadow up here that's really dark. We need to darken down this. Way in the shadow, way back there. The back of the arm is going to be all in solid shadow. And again, I may come in with yet a darker shadow as well, depending on how we go. But I think this one might be dark enough to give me that sunlit effect I'm looking for. I need to darken down the bottom of his jaw a lot, though. So, as you can see, like, you know, there are people like my boyfriend who will just, like, boom! They'll just put the lighting down on their figure and it looks natural and real and you're just like, ah! And your brain explodes and you're just like, how? But you don't have to do that. You could be like me. You can start with the block in and then adjust it. Adjust it as you go. Make sure that your dark shadows, wherever you've got these dark shadows, this color needs to also be on every other underlying surface that's not going to get a lot of light. I can go a little lighter on the cheekbones, and I should, because there's not a deep cut there, right? There's just a shallow cut. So the other thing to remember with shadows is that if you've got a really shallow surface, it's going to be a little bit of a lighter shadow. It's not going to be as dark as these deep tendons that are really etched deep into there. Like if I stick my brush in there, it's like, you know, at least 3 millimeters, and this is maybe 1 millimeter. So anything that's more shallow like that, like your cheekbone shadow, right? There's going to be reflected light, and it's not going to just make as dark a shadow as your open mouth, right? Which is a really deep shadow. So keep that in mind when you're doing realistic shadows, when you're trying to do drama. And you can over-accentuate if you want. There are plenty of painters who have over-accentuated the shadows under the cheekbones, but keep in mind that gives you that skull-like appearance. So it's not always the answer for every subject. Yeah, Chibi, I think to do it right, you'd need to actually convert pretty heavily. But you could get kind of a cubist look on if you picked the right figure. And this one is actually a good one because these muscles are somewhat angular cut, right? You can see like they've got angles to them and they're really deeply cut. So you could maybe do it But like if you were really gonna do it, you'd like maybe cut off the arms or not attach the one, not attach this, and kind of have to extrapolate and convert and make it all weird. I don't know. It would be a heavy conversion, but it would be super cool. I think it would actually be better for something bigger. Yeah, David is a magician, for sure. He gets light, but I'll tell you, Miss Dimp, he doesn't have the instinct for color that I've got. Like, there are lots of times where I'll look at his figure and say, oh, I think you need to go a little cooler there. Or, oh, that's too saturated. It's fighting because you need to desaturate this other thing. And he'll be like, oh, yeah. So, he's better at light, but I'm better at color. Or at least, okay, not better, or he has a more instinctual grasp of light, and I have a more instinctual grasp of color. Possibly because I loved colors when I was a kid, and so I got to thinking about them a lot more. All right, we're going to get a nice dark shadow right up under that lower lip. Going to block in the shadow underneath his mutton chops. We haven't decided on a color for those yet. But right now we're just trying to get consistent with our shadows. I also need to line his mouth. That's the other thing a lot of people don't do that you really need to. You absolutely need to line the mouth. And I need to do it with a darker color than this brown. But I'm going to start with this brown, and then we'll add in, probably going with walnut. The thing that I think is very doable, and I wish more people did, although it does take a long time, but kind of pointillism and impressionism, I think would lend themselves well to certain miniatures. And I do wish people sculpted more Art Nouveau type miniatures. Art Nouveau or Art Deco. Just because I love that style. Both of them. Both of those styles. So a line around the mouth brings the expression out. Brings the details out. You can see how this is all coming together now. Starting to come together. You can see the light falling. When the light starts to look real, you know you're good. Yeah, you could totally do that on an ogre. Yeah, Twisted Umber, we soon after we started dating, like I think it was one of my friends like who just took one look at it and went, "Oh, so mini painter power couple then." If we ever get down to the point where we collaborate, I'm pretty sure we could put out something amazing. But we're still learning about each other's work process. So we talk about collaborating and we're interested in collaborating, but we have to figure out like the best time. Like I think Bob and Julie, did you run into this when you first started working together? Did you like need to kind of figure out each other's work process to figure out the best time like to kind of collaborate, right? Because there are different times you could jump in on somebody else's work, and you definitely don't want to interrupt them like when they're in a groove, and there's like it's got to be like interesting trying to collaborate. Like when do you take the reins and when does your partner take the reins? And you know, I think there's a certain level of like learning each other's process before you can do that successfully. And I'm not sure like who starts. I think David has to start the mini and then I have to refine, because where David runs out of oomph is the time where I'm the most excited about the model. Like he will block in super fast and it'll be amazing, but it'll be rough. And then he'll kind of refine it, but I think that's where he gets bored, and I think maybe I would jump in there, you know, and then bring it back to him to do more stuff. Yeah, and the language is different. Yeah, right. Because David and I really want to collaborate on a piece. Like we talk about it a lot. But I was like thinking about it and I'm like, we need to figure out the best time in each other's process for us to hand it over. And then we've got to trust the other person, right? To just move with it. Because you have to care enough about the piece to do a good job. But when you care about a piece, you've got invested in it. And you've got to learn not to, like if somebody changes something or goes in a direction that you weren't going to go, I think it must take a special like skill to collaborate well with people. I've never collaborated on anything before. Not any big projects anyway, not in this stage of my life. So there we've got The teeth are coming out now because I lined them, even though I lined them with our shadow color. It's lots of fun. Yeah, that's what I figure. We'll do it. I think we need to pick a model for it. Because I do feel like together with his light and my color and also my freehand, like he's got this wonderful loose free style going in that I envy, and his command of lighting. But I've got like the freehand that like he doesn't have the patience for, but that I love to do, and the micro textures that I love to do. So I think the answer is that I take over the model when David's getting bored with it. Yeah, to do borders and alright, yeah. You have to trust their vision, right? Right, exactly. But I think that even when you set out to do that, it takes time to develop that, like, that feel for each other's work. Although, of course, if you do something that the other person really hates, you know, you can back out and do something else. That's the great thing about acrylics. You can paint over it. All right, so I'm essentially refining what I'm doing here. But can you see the light falling? So you got to ask yourself, can I see where the light is coming from? Like that's, what is it? Somebody got a critique from, I think, Jeremy, early on in their formative process. And he was like, I can't tell where the light is coming from. And that like turned the light bulb on for that person because they were like, oh, so when I look at the model, when the shadows and light are in, can I tell where the light is coming from by the positioning of the shadows? So ask yourself, if you're trying to work on your shadows and highlighting and you're feeling like you're getting there, but you're not there yet, look at your model. Ask yourself, when you're looking at it at the stage, can I tell where the light is coming from? Is it obvious? And then the more you accentuate that, if the answer is yes, the more you accentuate that, the more dramatic effect you will get. Oh yeah, with quilting, I bet so. Do it at a con, it would be fun to watch. Yeah, when both of our heads popped off when we're so frustrated with each other, maybe. Spectator sport, collaborative, like, rage. All right, so I'm going to do some shadows underneath the pecs now. Because there's definitely shadows. You can see this heavy shadow falling here, right? And then there's just a little bit, you can see this muscle back here, but you can see a heavy shadow through here. So use your eyes. Like, this is another version of paint what you see, you know, which is what they always tell you in art school when you're starting to practice art. Just paint what you see. But that's difficult, right? It's very difficult to paint what you see. But it's not undoable. And so looking at how the shadows fall, I'm going to put in a really dark shadow here. And then, since I know that I can see this area, but it's darker, I can see that it's darker, right? You can see this versus that. So then I'm going to put a lesser shadow. I'm going to blend in this area to make it a darker brown, but not as dark as the surrounding shadow. So we want to make this a darker yellow. Sorry, not brown. Brownish yellow. But we want to keep the darker, see there? Now it's painted a darker yellow and you can still see the shadows. Hello, Lancer. We are all well. We are painting an ogre, and we're doing dramatic lighting on him, which is fun. I like doing dramatic lighting. And I'll push it so that it's really dramatic. But I think it's getting there. I just need some sharper shadows, like the neck here. It's getting there, though. But yeah, the harsher and more angular and less blended in the shadow, the brighter and more intense the light source will appear. But the very beginning steps on that road are to ask yourself, can I tell where the light is coming from just looking at my paint job? Get that line in there real harsh. Now, on a rounded surface, like a pectoral muscle, you may have interim shadows to kind of, that build up to a darker shadow quickly, though. So you may end up with a little bit of shadow here to pick out these areas. And when you do this, yeah, there's some striations also here. There's a shadow under the collarbone right there. So kind of block it in again. When you do this, you will sometimes want transitions. So you might want not a harsh shadow on this, because these are rounded muscles. So there's no real big angular drop off. Like at these tendons, there definitely is. This is really sharp. It comes out, it has a very little area where it shifts over to cut under. You can see it. Whereas this is a big rounded area. So you're going to, in this case, even with a bright light, you're still going to have a little bit of transition. So keep an eye on the hollows in the skin where the muscles and tendons connect. Like over here where the breastplate, you have the breastplate connections here. And you've got the collarbone there. The collarbone's really recessed, so I'm probably going to keep it darker. It's not going to get a full highlight, but I still want to define it. When you have a detail in a shadow that you want to define, the answer is to surround it with darker shadow. So keep the area somewhat in shadow. The collarbone is right there. You can see it. But make sure it's surrounded by very dark shadow, and it is moderately in shadow, and that's how you bring out that detail. You end up not highlighting it. You end up using shadows to define it instead of highlights. So we're getting that. And it always, always, always be turning your model, be looking at it, be looking at the light and whether it feels right to you. Can you see where the light is coming from? If you see a shadow that appears more shallow that doesn't feel like it's dark enough for you, if you adjust it, does it look correct? Like that one up there. And add a little bit more. Just at the middle. Take it down. And quite harsh over here where the tendon connects, because that's, again, a very up and down surface. There's a little bit of a striation here. And sometimes if you've got a shadow, if you've got a muscle to define on the top of a muscle mass, you may probably just do the tiniest little shadow and mostly define it with highlights. So again, in realistic lighting, if you have a shadowed area that you need to pick out a detail on, then you just use darker shadows to define it. If you have a highlighted area that you need to define details on, you probably are going to use higher highlights, or if you do use a tiny shadow, make sure it's very subtle like that. And really assess whether there's a deep enough cut there to make that shadow. I think I can get away with it, so I'm going to do it. This goes with the whole pentad highlighting thing I put out on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig, where you still have highlights, midtones, and shadows on upper areas and lower areas. But on your lower areas, it's all a shadow triad. And on your upper areas, it's a highlight triad. Thank you for the Patreon link, Quindy. We're doing a lot of pentad stuff lately. The color workshop this month is going to be oranges. I'm going to do at least one pumpkin-y kind of orange-brown and do a bright orange as well for those pentads. Pentads are fun. And if you are interested in my Patreon, head on over, check it out. I have some free stuff, including a handout for a free class that's on Reaper's YouTube called Thinning Msp Paints. Brain. Jet lag. Prophecy, yeah, I fell out for a very long time. I got really burned out. I was Reaper staff painter for years. And then, yeah, I started just making paint in their paint department. I became the paint line designer. So I was really burned out for a very long time. And then I started painting again. It was my Overwatch Soldier 76 statue because, to break a burnout, I had to do something that was 140 hours long. There's a very large statue, but it got me back in, and so I did enter the last crystal brush competition and made the photo cut. I made the first cut. I didn't expect to win because it wasn't converted or sculpted heavily, but it was just a stock model. Usually those are not going to win a crystal brush, but I felt like I felt like I did well for myself, and painters who I respected a lot really loved my piece, so pretty good. So now I'm kind of back in. We're considering going to Las Vegas Open, and we're going to be doing Adepticon Golden Demon this coming spring, and I will be trying extra hard to get something done for Golden Demon. I haven't entered since 2003. In 2002, I won 2 of them. So yeah, I'm getting back into it. We'll see. It's hard because since the Patreon is my work now, since I'm freelance again, making time for your own painting is hard because you've got commissions, you've got stuff to put out for your Patreon, you've got all this stuff. Thank you, Quindy. There's my thinning Msp Paints video. Quindy just linked it. So if you're working with MSP and you would like to know generally how much to thin it for various techniques, that is a free video that's up in forever on Reaper's YouTube. And I have a handout cheat sheet for it over on my Patreon for free. There we go. So we're getting that shadow again. I want that shadow right here because this big protrusion of muscle is going to be casting a shadow below it as well. But yeah, I'm kind of excited about getting back into competition. Like I felt like I was very, very good, pretty well known at one point in my life, and then I took a very long break, and everybody else got awesome, and I'm like, crap. Now I have to work harder. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah, you can see my, it's paintingbig.net. I think the first thing on there is my Soldier 76. It's a 12-inch tall statue. Keep that in mind when you're looking at the pictures. He's my header on my Patreon also. But yeah, I need to get some other pictures up. I have been trying to rework my schedule so I can catch up on things like the website. All right, so once again, the line here has gotten a little flat. And it's because there is actually kind of a bend kind of sculpted in there, I think, because it goes over here. So sometimes there will be a feature of the sculpt that that encourages a sharp demarcation, like that line actually is sculpted onto the model. And I don't think it's a mold line I missed because the mold line goes around the outside, but it's definitely an angle. So you can decide whether to embrace that or to try to fuzz it out. I'm going to fuzz it just a little bit. When you've got a subtle thing on a model and you just are not feeling it, feel free to use paint plastic surgery to adjust it. No, actually, I never got into CMON because I wasn't a big supporter of the guy who ran it at that time. So I never did CMON. Jennifer's old stuff is up there, though. Well worth always taking a look at Ms. Haley's stuff. She worked for Dave, though, so she was like, she was more invested in CMON. And she worked for them. She worked for CMON again pretty recently. Doesn't now, but now they're not as into miniatures, so. But yeah, I don't have a lot of my old stuff. I think it's pretty much gone to the void. I own my Golden Demon winner, my original, the first one. Still own him. But back in those days, I was pretty much selling things to live, so I didn't keep much from that time. I think I still have one of my first ever little like Mordheim models, and he's my oldest model that I still own. It's a little Chaos Hound that I dry brushed, so you know that it was early in my formative years that he was painted. But yeah, there are people out there that still own my old stuff, I'm sure. So a little bit of shadow in there. So we're building kind of this portrait of forms here. We're building we're trying to build these forms. We're trying to define all of these shapes with shadow. And we're not even touching highlight yet. When we start touching highlight, then the light's going to come on real strong. But you want to be able to see where your light is coming from, even just blocking in shadow. Brigala, we are using the Oxide Brown from the Kickstarter today. 9333. One of my favorite all-time colors. The old version of it was Ruddy Brown from HD. It's an excellent warm brown for... We're doing a very warm shading. Oh my gosh, you're right. It has, Quindy. She's divorced, and she is still painting Prophecy. Doing private commissions, I think. Sometimes she does some work for some companies. But yeah, that's pretty much... I think that's pretty much what Jen's doing these days. She does a bit here and there. But yeah, so they're all right. We're going to call it because as Quindy has so kindly pointed out, we've gone very far. But I think this is a very good project, guys. I think this is going to be fun to kind of show how to define the shapes just with shading. Let's look how flat it all looks over there and look how dramatic it all looks over here. So we're going to have some fun with this one, I think. This ogre is not going to be simple. He's a simple model, but it just goes to show you how cool you can make something simple look when you spend a little extra time on it. So, and you do cool lighting. So there is Ogre, and he's metal, by the way. He's a chonk. So yeah, so we'll keep working on this, and we'll kind of always keep these things in mind. So we'll sculpt the model out using midtone and shadow, and then we'll start putting in highlights to really pop that. Yeah. She still has that. Yeah, she's Jennifer's a trooper though. I saw her, she came to ReaperCon. She was working for one of the booth vendors there, just doing a bit. She was taking a break. She decided she didn't want to judge or teach. She was happy to just go around and look at everybody's stuff. Yeah, 2 p.m. Central for Beyond the Kit with Rhonda, who's been putting out some excellent stuff on her blog, birdwithabrush.com. Go and check it. Yeah, because I'm going to be gone. So essentially tomorrow we start we're going to finish up the last bit of lighting on our orc, because we started doing the glowiness down here. So we're going to finish that up quick, and then she is completely done tomorrow, and we will probably start the skin on Vitanis. And I might do the dark skin that I did actually on the Patreon. I did a kind of a version of him, but I didn't finish him. It was like a metal one that I had and had some pitting. I didn't want to keep it. So maybe we'll paint this guy with dark tiefling skin. So yeah. That's what we're going to do. And then I'm gone until Tuesday, the following week, because I have a trip and then a dentist appointment. And then I'm back through the holidays. So yeah, next time we work on Ogre will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, Monday. Next 2 weeks from now, Monday. But there you go. So yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. Who are we rating today, Quindy? We are rating Brush for Hire. Awesome. Okay, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. It's been great to hang out with you again. I will be back tomorrow, and then we can see what we can do on that tiefling, all right? Have a great one. Bye-bye.